Call this meeting of the Chino City Council and the successor agency to the redevelopment agency together. The date is June 11th. Please note that all council members are present. If you'd please stand, Mayor Pro Tem Comstock will lead us in the flag salute.
Thank you, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we salute our nation's flag. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, first item on the agenda is an area where the public can address us about items that are not on the agenda elsewhere. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to discussion item number 1, Police Air Support Program. This item is to receive a presentation and provide direction on a proposal for a police air support program. Our staff report this evening will be provided by Lieutenant Aaron Kelleher and Chino Police Chief Kevin Menson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Keller. It's a two-part presentation. The first one is going to be on the air support, and the second one will be on the substation. So I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Kelleher for the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. It's a privilege to come before you tonight to talk about a project that we've been working on at the Police Department for, well over 10 years now, and actually goes back a little over 20 years. So in 2001, I just came across a memo recently that was issued by then Lieutenant Cisneros to then Captain Tooley, direction of Council Member Elrod at the time, to study getting a police helicopter to serve the Chino Police Department. So this is a project that we've been working on for a really long time and really seriously over the course of the last decade. So let's talk a little bit about, starting to talk about our mission tonight. So the mission of the Chino Police Department, it's on the side of our cars. We wear it proudly. We're dedicated to the safety of the community. It's our community. And if you look at our mission statement, it's a little bit longer than that. It talks about teamwork and problem-solving partnerships. But really the core mission of the Chino Police Department is to keep this community safe. And our officers really are dedicated to the safety of our community. So how do we achieve that mission? Well, first and foremost is uniform patrol. So what is uniform patrol? Well, kind of like the name implies, it's putting uniformed officers, right, easily identified uniformed officers in distinctly marked black and white police vehicles, and then assigning them to patrol specific geographic areas throughout the city. And why do we do this? Well, we do this, number one, for the prevention of crime. It is the ultimate goal of all police departments to prevent crime from occurring. That's why we put officers in distinctly marked black and white police vehicles. We put them in uniform so that they deter crime. Their primary goal is not the apprehension of criminals. It's to stop the crime from occurring by being visibly present in the community, right? And why is that so important? So if you go back to the founding of the London Metropolitan Police, Sir Robert Peel laid out his 9 principles of policing. And that first principle is the goal of all police is the prevention of crime. Why? Because once a crime's occurred, you're going to have significant cost, both to the individual victims and to society at large, right? So for our victims of crimes, once a crime occurred, they suffer sometimes physical losses, sometimes financial losses. On the societal side, there's societal costs that occur from crime, right? So when the crime occurs, we have to respond to it, we have to investigate it, we have to apprehend the offender, then we've got to prosecute the offender, then incarcerate the offender. In addition to the societal physical costs, there's psychological costs associated with the incidence of crime. So if your neighbor's house gets broken into, and you hear about it, not only is your neighbor victimized, but you're victimized by that fear of the incidence of crime as well, right? And that psychologically affects the community because crime that goes unsolved or unanswered, right, leaves a feeling of vulnerability in the community. So ultimately, our goal is out there is to prevent crime occurring in the first place, to prevent those societal costs, and to really improve the quality of life for our community, right? The success of policing is the absence of crime, ultimately. Now, what happens if a crime does occur? Well, then our second goal then becomes the rapid apprehension of criminal offenders, because we know that every second that goes by, it becomes less and less likely that we'll apprehend those offenders, and those offenders then will go on to continue to victimize other people, so perpetuating the cycle of crime and violence. So how do we do that? Well, first and foremost is through fast response times, right? Having adequate police staffing and being able to get to the scene of criminal incidents quickly, first and foremost to stop additional victimization, to stop violence that's going on, and then secondly, to go apprehend those criminal offenders. So how do we do that? Well, we leverage technology, right? So the city of Chino has invested significant infrastructure in technology for the police department. Our license plate reader system, our CCTV system, and the use of our real-time crime center, we really leverage that technology to really conduct complete investigations, right? So that we're going out there, we're following up every lead. And then when we get a lead and we know where you're at and you committed a crime in the city of Chino, we're gonna come find you. That tenacious pursuit of criminals and apprehending criminals, no matter what the crime is really the hallmark of the policing in Chino. Besides being out there in the community preventing these crimes, if a crime does occur, we're gonna come and get you. So that's how we deliver on the mission of safety to our community. But we are facing significant challenges to being able to achieve that mission. And so we'll talk about those challenges. First, rapid growth, right? This community has grown to approximately 30 square miles. It started as a really kind of a small agricultural community and then developed into a very quaint bedroom community. And then over the last 30 years, it's really developed into a center of, high quality residential, retail development, commercial development, industrial development. It's become a job center. So, we have a population now that's rapidly approaching 100,000 people. But the growth has not occurred just in our service population, it's occurred over our service area, right? So the area that we deliver police services to, that patrol service, that deterrent of crime, has grown exponentially. So at 30 square miles, we know that that's a lot of area to cover for a police department. And the growth has really occurred in kind of opposing ends of the city. So that population growth, while almost 100,000 now, we know is gonna go up to about 145 to 155,000 in the next 15 to 20 years. That rapid continued growth. And so that poses a significant challenge, right? And then we have geographical challenges. So as you know, most cities in our region are laid out on a kind of a north, south, east, west grid pattern, unless of course you're in the city of Chino Hills where you can go north, south, east, and west all on the same street. But generally speaking, all of our region is laid out in that north, south, east, west grid pattern. But the city of Chino itself, though, geographically is kind of laid along a northwest to a southeast orientation. So it makes getting places difficult. And then you factor in, right in the middle of that, we have the state prison, which blocks a lot of direct travel to and from locations. So our ability to circulate our patrol resources amongst the city is challenging because of the geographic environment with the diagonal layout of the city and coupled with the presence of the prison right in the middle of that. So in addition to the rapid growth and the geographical challenges, we have the state-created dangers that our city is facing right now. Primarily that flows from the ill-fated Prop 47, right? Prop 47 reduced a number of felony crimes to misdemeanors, namely our drug offenses and theft offenses. And what that did is that took away a significant tool for us to hold people accountable for their actions. So now you have less people being apprehended for felony offenses, right? And then you have the state prison wholesale releasing people under Prop 57 out of state prisons where the wardens can now give unlimited credits to release people and drop down their prison numbers. And then the state, with AB 109, took a significant portion of the state prison population and transferred them into our local county jails and housed state prison offenders in our county jails, significantly reducing the capacity of our county jails to hold on to these low-level now drug and theft offenders. So what that effectively did is create a more permissive environment for crime. And we see that daily now. We see that with the retail theft explosion, and we see that with the explosion in homelessness, and we see that with the explosion of drug use and drug overdoses, because there is no effective deterrence to crime when it comes to the ability to incarcerate people. So what our main goal now is to continue to really make Chino an undesirable place to commit crime, or as Deputy Chief Bieland is fond of calling it, we need to harden the target. We need to make Chino a place where it's difficult to commit crimes at. And then you add in another really state-created danger, and that's the state prison, right? That prison continues to pose a significant threat to our communities, and it will challenge our abilities to provide efficient public safety going forward. So as a kind of just a visual representation of growth. So here's an overhead view from the year 2000 of the city of Chino. A couple of things I kind of wanted to note here. So if you look here, this is the Spectrum South, still a field, right? There's no real fill-in from the East Chino specific plan. There's no College Park. There's no industrial development in the south end. There's no preserve. There's no industrial development on the east side. But more importantly, there's no such thing as a city of Eastville in 2000, right? So that didn't exist. You fast forward a mere 20 years, And you can see the significant growth that's occurred, not just in the city of Chino, right, where now you have the spectrum filled in, you have the East Chino specific plan completed, you have College Park completed, you have the preserve almost half completed, right? You have significant industrial development both off of Euclid and then off of the airport corridor as well. But you also have a pop-up city that occurred literally overnight in the city of Eastville. Just kind of, that's 2000, that's 2020. And that city popped up. And so we have the traffic, the circulation problems, the attendant crime that comes in with having a city that has grown this rapidly. And mind you too, it's also grown in the sense that Chino, when I first started patrolling here, Chino was really as far as our busy times, a Friday and Saturday night community, right? So we had the bar fights. Those were kind of our problem times or our busy times. We actually had a residential population that was higher than our daytime population. Well, that number flipped many years ago. So our daytime population's over 110,000, sometimes up to 115,000. So our daytime population, because of the job center that we have become, we've really added a significant circulation to the city, which once again challenges our ability to provide efficient and effective police services. So what does that bring us to? That brings us to what we're talking about here tonight, which is an air support program for the Chino Police Department. Once again, this is not a new idea. We tried contracting with the City of Ontario in 2006. That fell through. This council actually approved a contract to provide a per call per minute basis with the City of Ontario. Unfortunately, it fell through on the City of Ontario side. And then we reapproached Ontario about contracting for air support services again, and they really are the ones who challenged us and said, hey, you guys need your own helicopter. You're busy enough. And then if you guys have a helicopter, we can all work together. So that was the genesis of us really pursuing our own helicopter program. Like I said, in 2001, it was already brought up, so it wasn't a new idea. And what are the goals and objectives of an air support program for the police department? Well, our number one deliverable is a reduction in response to priority P calls, really driving down that response time. Increasing the safety and security of our community by deterring criminal activity through proactive patrols with the helicopter. Increasing the efficiency of our police operations. Right, so the helicopter is really good about being a force multiplier and increasing the efficiency of our operations, and then really increasing the safety for our officers on the ground and our citizens as well through the unparalleled situational awareness that the police helicopter provides during critical incidents. And finally, we want to provide the city with a cost-effective solution to scale police services along with the rapid growth that is occurring and will occur in the next 15 years. So as a visual representation, we talk about deterring crime. What you're looking at here is a police vehicle from an overhead view, and kind of the red circle represents the area that people on the ground would know, hey, there's a police car there, right? And that's really what we're doing on patrol. We're not sitting in a building waiting for a call to come out. Our officers are actually out in the community proactively patrolling, showing a visible presence, deterring that crime from occurring, right? We know that criminals are not keen to commit crimes when the presence of the police are around. Well, the patrol capability of a helicopter is significantly more widespread. So if you can tell here, that helicopter is actually over the same location that police car was. And Passing the Police did a study on their helicopter program and showed that their deterrent effect of the police helicopter was worth 16 ground units when it's out in the field and working. So significantly better at deterring crime at scale. So the police helicopter gets out there and deters crime at a much larger scale than a patrol vehicle could. And it just makes a lot of sense because you can see the helicopter from the ground. Most criminals don't know that the helicopter is or isn't watching them, and so they're hesitant to commit crimes when the helicopter's there. When it comes to the other half of the equation, the detecting crime, right? So the other thing our police officers are out doing, they're looking for the ability to proactively deter crime by stopping suspicious subjects and preventing crime or stopping crime as it occurs. The picture on the left really reflects the daily life of a patrol officer in the Chino Police Department. They're inside of a police vehicle. They're driving around our city, right? But the first and foremost thing they're doing is they're driving a car, right? And inside that car, they're navigating traffic. They're trying to anticipate whether the light's going to change. They're listening to the radio. They're watching the mobile data computer. They're having to look around the obstructions in the car. And then in between that, they're making quick observations about activity that's going on at the street level. And they're making decisions in a couple of seconds about whether or not activity warrants a stop or not. Compare that to the picture on the right, which is the view outside of a police helicopter, and you can see the ability to detect crime at scale, right? So you're looking at blocks at a time, not half of a street in front of you. The officer, the tactical flight officer, who is the observer who sits in the left side of the aircraft, they're not flying the helicopter. They're simply out there focused on the law enforcement mission. They're looking for what's going on out there. They don't have to worry about operating the helicopter. They're not doing that. They're simply out there focusing on a law enforcement mission, looking for criminal activity in areas that you simply cannot see from the ground. So the ability to deter and detect crime from a patrol basis, right? It's like putting a black and white in the air. And now its ability to deter and detect crime is a much larger scale. It's super effective, and that's really kind of the primary purpose of a patrol helicopter program. When it comes to police helicopters, the unique ability of the helicopter to navigate directly to where they need to go to as the crow flies is unique, right? And it really helps drive down the response time. They're not having to go north, then east, then south, and they're not making all the turns. They're going straight to where the call is there. So we know that when a helicopter is in the air in the city of Chino, it'll be first on scene to 90% of all priority P calls when it's in the air. And we did a retrospective study of call response times, and we were able to determine that a police helicopter deployed during our busiest hours, 4 days a week, would have reduced citywide response times by over 15%, just flying those 4 days a week. When it comes to helicopters, they're kind of ubiquitous when it comes to pursuits. Matter of fact, a lot of agencies that have helicopters, their primary reason is pursuit management and pursuit liability. And the city has experienced an increase in pursuits, largely due to the effectiveness of our ALPR system, right? When criminals are driving stolen cars and coming into this town to commit crimes, our license plate reader systems are picking them up, and then our dispatchers are alerting officers to the location of these stolen vehicles, and then officers are converging on the area looking for the vehicle. The helicopter is kind of a perfect marriage with the real-time crime center, right? The real-time crime center has paid dividends to this community. The ability of a police helicopter to team up with those real-time crime centers is a key and continue to deliver high-quality services, and pursuits is really a good example of this. So when an officer locates a stolen vehicle and attempts to stop that vehicle and the vehicle flees, the officer has to make a decision. The officer has to make a determination whether or not the need to apprehend the suspect is greater than the threat that the ongoing pursuit poses to the danger of the community. So that puts officers in kind of an unenviable catch-22 situation where you got to really decide between two choices you don't want to make. You want to let the suspect go because you know they're coming to commit crimes. People aren't driving stolen cars into Chino just to hang out, right? Those stolen cars are here to do other crimes. They're here to commit robberies, thefts, to victimize our residents. We know that through our LPR data, that most of our stolen vehicles, arrests, and people coming into the city are people coming from the outside who don't live here. So it's not people coming home to hang out. They're literally here to do other crimes. So you either have to choose to let that go, or you got to risk the danger of a pursuit to a public. And so we know effectively, Miami Beach PD did a study which showed that when a police helicopter is present over a pursuit, the suspects are apprehended over 90% of the time. So it's extremely effective at ensuring criminals are apprehended. But what it also does is it gives us the ability to not have to make that public safety catch-22 decision. So if a pursuit gets so dangerous that ground units can't continue, the ground units can shut off their lights and sirens, can follow from a distance where the suspect can't see them, then the helicopter can go to what we call tracking mode. In that tracking mode, the helicopter will be able to follow the suspect vehicle with the police units out of view. And when that vehicle stops, the helicopter is able then to direct the police units into making an arrest, right? So now we're not having to make that decision. Do we continue pursuing, or do we let the suspect get away? We can accomplish both of those very valuable public safety goals. We're able to apprehend those offenders while also maintaining officer safety and minding the safety of our citizens by reducing the incidence of pursuits. Really, the elephant in the room right now is the prison. All right, the prison continues to be a problem, be it riots like this picture on the left show or escapes like the picture on the right shows. We know that the prison continues to pose a significant risk to the safety of our community, largely due to the dilapidated conditions, which should have condemned this prison years ago. Don't take my word for it. The California Department of Corrections Inspector General report from 2008 clearly laid out the case that the state was vastly underfunding prison security or prison maintenance by about a factor of $25 million a year-ish, $23 million a year. They were underfunding that prison by. And if they didn't dramatically increase funding, it should have been condemned by 2014. Well, here we are 10 years later, and the prison has not been condemned. No, what we're doing instead is we're making it more dangerous. And past escapes have really illustrated the need for us to have our own police helicopter. So in 2018, the inmate Michael Garrett escaped his housing facility, scaled a barbed wire fence, scaled another barbed wire fence, broke into a dive shop inside the prison, stole a wetsuit from the dive shop, broke back out of the dive shop, back over a barbed wire fence, over a perimeter fence with razor wire, that he got caught up in the razor wire for about 20 minutes, where he hung suspended in the air in the razor wire for about 20 minutes in between two manned armed guard towers, right? And one of the reasons why he went undetected for so long was because the shaker wire, which should have alerted prison staff that somebody was on the fence, had been defective. Not for a week, not for a month, not for 3 months, for 3 years. That suspect then fell. The escapee, Mr. Garrett, fell outside of the secure prison perimeter, was then able to move about the vast prison complex undetected, eventually stealing a car from a security guard at a local warehouse and leading our officers on such a dangerous high-speed chase that we were unable to keep up with them. We were not able to get a police helicopter that night. I was the incident commander out there, and it was very frustrating to watch that suspect get away because we were unable to obtain air support. I can't order the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department to bring in a helicopter when they're not on duty. I can't order the Ontario Police Department to bring in a helicopter when they're not on duty. But if we have our own police helicopter, that's something that will be there, and that asset will be available to us until that inmate is captured, right? And we know that the next security incident is around the corner. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And now the prison has upped the ante by adding LWOP and death row inmates to the equation. So the next time a prisoner escapes, the next time there's a security incident at the prison, it's going to fall upon us to be able to continue to provide for the safety of our community, and a police helicopter is going to be critical to be able to maintain public safety in that situation. It will exhaust every single law enforcement resource, not just in the city of Chino, not just in the city of Chino Hills, but the city of Ontario, the city of Montclair, and pretty much every city around here. So that helicopter is going to be critical to be able to provide for that situation when it occurs. Critical incident management, this is another area where police helicopters are really known for, right? So what's the helicopter circling for? It's usually for a critical incident, right? When it's down low and it's doing that. And why? Because the helicopter can quickly respond to emergencies. They get there fast, they get there first, and then they provide tactical leadership to the ground. They start setting up perimeters, they quickly locate suspects, and what this requires then is less ground officers have to respond to these situations, right? So when you have a helicopter overhead, you don't need as many officers on a perimeter to secure a perimeter. So a good example of this is this situation here, which you see a picture on the top here. It's a little bit hard to see, but this subject here broke into a house after committing a robbery at a nearby shopping center where he stole a purse and then ran into this house and broke into this house. When officers on the ground were surrounding the house and preparing to make entry, he kicked out the upstairs window, got onto the patio cover, ran across the patio cover with a single leap, leaped over that big gap and over a 6-foot block wall onto the street behind, and took off on foot. Now this was an NCAA football athlete. This person was an absolute athlete. None of us are going to be able to run and keep up with this guy. He made it several blocks, then ran into another location where a person was pulling into their garage, ran into the garage. The helicopter is able to follow him the whole time, give the units the exact address the person went into. They get there and they were able to apprehend that suspect. If that helicopter wasn't there during that situation, we're out there for hours looking for this guy. Whether we get him or not, it's a whole different situation without the helicopter there. Because it was there, this situation was resolved in tens of minutes, not in hours, right? So that means that those officers are getting back to their normal patrol duties in a fast and efficient manner, and it's returning normalcy to the community in a much more rapid manner. So we're out there then handling calls for service. The officers are out there making proactive contacts or engaging in community policing because the helicopter is so efficient at critical incident management. So to highlight the importance of officer safety and critical incident management, we're going to watch a video here quickly. So just to set up the video a little bit, the video you're about to see is a video from the San Diego Police Department's ABLE, their police helicopter. In 2017, they responded to a shooting call at a large apartment complex, think like Homecoming, and where there was a report of a subject at the pool shooting multiple people, and there was multiple people down. So it was an active shooter call at an apartment complex. The helicopter was on the ground. It responded from the ground and got there rapidly. And then a couple of things I want to point out is you're going to see the view from the police helicopter upon initial arrival. You're going to see the tactical flight officer's ability to really assess the scene from the air, not just the camera, to look out the aircraft and realize, oh, we're looking the wrong spot. We should be over here. To locate the shooter, to give tactical leadership to the ground units, to stage medical. So you'll see all the things that happens, but you're also going to see an overlay of the ground officer's body camera videos, and you'll see the difference between the ground officer's confusion and chaos and then the situational awareness that probably saved, well, we know it saved the many of the victims' lives on the ground, but also probably saved these officers' lives. So with that, I'll play the video.
All right, well, 97 on camera. We have the pool in sight, just looking for suspect F.
10-4. 15 yellow 97. 15 yellow for 97.
Please 3, Roger. All right, there's 2 pools. It's probably this one.
More shots fired. More shots fired.
Alrighty, well, I think we have your suspect in sight. He's going to be on the northeast corner of this first pool, just off of the traffic area. Tan shorts, blue shirt, handgun in his lap, and he's on the cell phone. Able to stage multiple fire. We have at least 4 people down on the ground next to this guy.
Again, the suspect is on the northeast corner of the first pool.
Well, I can't see him. I'm on the northwest corner of the pool. Okay, he's shooting again. He has the gun in his hand. He's aiming to the north. He is, I don't know who he's shooting at this point. We have someone else down in the stairwell. He's shooting over towards these people right now. He's shooting at somebody on the phone, all black, female. She's in all black. For the officer running to the east, okay, he's going to be up over that wall on the far side of the pool from you. Hey! Jonathan! I don't know if he just left there.
Can't see him.
Just moved. Okay, he's now reloading. He is against the wall. He's going to be undercover from you guys, sitting down on the actual floor. If you guys come to the north side of that pool, he is hiding behind a small wall, again, northeast corner.
Drop the gun! He's good. 15 yellow, shots fired, suspect down.
Just don't from his knee, guys. He is hunched over. Let's get at least 3 on the contact team going there.
Put me in.
He's going to be secured. Let's let fire in as well. They need to get here quick. We'll get more people down.
Right. If he moves, shoot him again, okay? Yeah. So you get on my other side. All right, so let's do it. Hey, cover. I'm gonna hop over the wall. All right.
Incident, right? Those victims that are there on that ground bleeding are not getting medical attention until that suspect gets secured, right? But the tactical flight officer directs those officers to where the suspect is, provides them critical information that they don't know. They're on that ground, you're hearing echoes over the place. They can't locate where the gunshots are coming from. He directs them right to where they're at. Lets them know, hey, he's hiding behind a wall. He's in a position to cover, but they may not have spotted him. So him pointing them there lets them know exactly what to expect when they come around the corner. During that time, also, I don't know if you heard it, it's kind of tough with the gunshots going on, but the tactical flight officer is also getting medical aid staged. He's telling, hey, tell the fire department you've got a mass casualty incident out here. Stage units, he's telling them where to go to, and then he's directing units on the ground. Hey, when you approach this guy, take a contact team, and then let's get fire in here right away. So providing that tactical leadership, thinking 2 steps ahead, really important to resolving critical incidents quickly and saving lives. So For context, we cut that video down, way down. It's a lot longer than that. That response from the ground, the aircraft on the ground, till that suspect in custody was 6 minutes and 21 seconds. So that's an eternity, it seemed like, right? But in reality, that's a pretty rapid response time from being on the ground to getting that suspect into custody and getting medical aid to those people. It's critical. So a little bit closer to home. So the next video we're going to show here is an armed robbery suspects. Our detectives were looking for suspects and that were implicated in a series of armed robberies with a handgun. Detectives located the suspect vehicle, and then the suspect vehicle fled when the officers tried to stop them. The video you're watching is from Ontario's police helicopter, and you're going to pick up the pursuit as it's southbound on Central Avenue, approaching Columbus Street, so just passing the 60 freeway, making a turn onto Columbus there, going past the Taco Bell and the Skate Express. So a couple things to watch for in this video. One is, once again, the coordination from the air crew, telling the ground units exactly what's going on, and then how quickly that suspect gets apprehended who's running. And then also, I'm going to point out a critical point in the video where the suspect discards an important piece of evidence that was critical in this investigation and also critical to the safety of the community. So with that, I'll play the video.
Right turn pocket at Columbus, entering the shopping center.
Copy, John. Columbus approaching the shopping center.
You guys are going to be westbound Columbus from Central.
Copy, westbound Columbus from Central.
Sam 5, sufficient units in the pursuit.
Ran the stop sign southbound Marshall from Columbus.
Copy, southbound.
Passengers out wearing all gray, continuing southbound. Hey guys, I'll watch this passenger get the driver.
Alright, male Hispanic, gray hoodie, running west. We get a unit at Walnut and Telephone. Walnut, Telephone. One unit at Columbus and Walnut.
Give me the air real quick. I have this passenger. Just confirm you have the other two. This guy's running southbound in the apartments.
We have two. One outstanding. Gray hoodie outstanding.
Air unit, that passenger.
Balcony.
BR2 allowed to suspect. Walnut, stop. I still have the guy. He's in the complex. He's wearing all gray.
That is not a police
All
officer,
gray.
that's just a
You're gonna
person
be-
walking
that's
through the
what- you're gonna be
complex.
with him. They're making contact in the complex. They're taking him into custody just northwest of the pool.
So the suspect was taken into custody. The air crew replayed the video, confirmed the suspect looked like he threw a gun into that balcony. They directed one of our K-9 units over there. They searched the balcony area and found the gun. Can you imagine what would have happened in that situation had some kid come out and found that gun? And with the air crew being there, that suspect is in custody in minutes. The suspects in the vehicle are in custody. That situation is resolved in minutes. It's not resolved in the 2, 3, or 4 hours we've been searching on foot with the dog, searching for these suspects and who we may or may not have caught. The air crew in this situation really provides the important context of being able to handle critical incidents effectively, manage resources on the ground, provide tactical leadership, and ultimately rapidly apprehend suspects. So they are critical in these critical incident management situations, right? Those two videos have shown. But that's not all they do. The air crews are not just there to handle critical incidents. So when they're on patrol, they're handling all kinds of calls, right? So oftentimes we get calls for area checks for DUI drivers, things like that. The helicopter is able to quickly handle a lot of calls from the air, which then frees up those ground units to attend to other calls for service report calls, proactive policing, community policing, right? It keeps those units where they need to be. Remember, we're trying to keep those ground units in specific geographic areas, but we're bouncing all over the city, navigating a tough city to navigate. That helicopter can do a lot of things. It can make those area check calls that we get, right? We make area checks for suspicious vehicles, for suspicious subjects, for DUI and reckless drivers. So the air crew can get there quickly, locate the problem on the ground, determine whether or not a further police response is warranted, right? And so we're making efficient use of the resources, the limited resources on the ground we have. And then burglary alarms is another one, right? 98% of all burglar alarms are false. We know this. Right, we can get a police helicopter to the scene of a burglar alarm much quicker than we can get 2 ground units there, and it takes 2 ground units to work a burglar alarm call. that air crew can see things the ground units can't see. They can check the exterior for signs of burglary. They can use their FLIR camera, like the infrared camera, like in this case, to detect heat from vehicles. And they can determine whether or not a ground response is warranted, thereby, once again, keeping those ground units free to attend to those more important matters of proactive policing and community-oriented policing. So the rapid response and the aerial vantage that the helicopter affords in even routine call handling is critical for us to be able to continue to have an effective force multiplier, right? To be able to utilize the same number of ground units that makes them much more effective. So it's an effective force multiplier. Street racing is another area that has been emerging in the last couple of years, right? Street takeovers, sideshows are a huge problem. A helicopter is a great tool in order to combat that growing problem. So especially when we have heads up that things are going to occur, the air crew is critical. So right now, what happens is at these sideshows, a lot of times we get tons of police resources there, we break them up and then direct them on, and very few people get held accountable because as what happened the other day, a couple of weeks ago in San Bernardino, you get too few units trying to intervene in these situations without the proper support. Their cars get surrounded, they get vandalized, they get attacked, right? So they can be dangerous. The helicopter can record the criminal activity, and because a police officer is making a live observation, that police officer's observations then may be a basis to follow up the next day with our traffic units to get seizure orders for these vehicles. So it's a very effective tool for us to take away the cars of these offenders without having to get into a confrontation there where we're outnumbered. So the helicopter helps disperse the crowd, and then we follow up for the criminal activity later based on the observations made by the police officer in the air. And it has to be a live observation for us to support a court order for a seizure of vehicles. So it's a very effective tool in combating this growing problem. Missing person searches is another area where helicopters are critical. So you see here is a picture of a FLIR video. This is an infrared video that shows a missing autistic child quickly located on FLIR. So the helicopters are essential in quickly locating missing and endangered persons, right? Because they get there, they can quickly search large areas, and then they can also use their public address system to enlist the aid of neighbors. So they provide a description of who we're looking for, usually the name. A lot of times neighbors will hear, oh, they're looking for Greg. Well, he's over at Johnny's house. I saw him walk over there 10 minutes ago. So not only are we getting people looking, but we're getting leads. That happens so often. Once again, that helicopter becomes a force multiplier for our ground units, and critical, especially when time is a necessity. We've seen a significant increase in the instances of autism in society. And also we have an aging population as well, right? And so we have people who are walking away with dementia. We have group homes. Those are all things that a helicopter is very, very important for getting there quickly and helping to locate missing and endangered persons. Disaster response is another one. We know the city's facing significant natural hazards, namely from earthquakes, but also significant and unique to our city is the threat of flooding from being at the bottom of the floodplain. We have great water resources, but that comes with the cost, and that cost is the danger of flooding. The great thing about having a helicopter be able to respond to natural disasters, we don't need roads to transport people and supplies. So if we need to get elected officials back to the city because they're out of town somewhere, we can get them there quickly to make those disaster declarations. If we have key personnel in the city that are out of place we need to get them to, we can transport them and get them there quickly so we can ensure the continuity of government and services. We can make ad hoc transports of critical patients if the ambulance system is overwhelmed. So it affords us an opportunity to continue to provide services in the face of major natural disasters. So what does an air support program look like for the Chino Police Department? So what we're looking at doing is deploying a patrol-based helicopter deployed during peak hours, 4 days a week for 10 hours a day, and they would actually be scheduled to fly 5 hours of the day. So it's not just sitting on the ground waiting for a call. Once again, out there proactively patrolling the community, right, deterring crime primarily, and also looking to detect crime so that we can stop the instance of crime occurring. What does that require staffing-wise? Staffing-wise, we would be looking at one full-time tactical flight officer. Now, that is not a new position. That would be an existing position we'd take from patrol. We transfer that person from patrol to air support. So those are specially trained officers that have been through tactical flight officer school. We have a number who've been there already. We would need about 4 backup tactical flight officers who would fill an ancillary assignment that would fly a couple of times a month to provide relief to the full-time personnel, vacation relief, and then also to build up a cadre of experienced tactical flight officers to maintain continuity of the program. We'd have 3 to 4 part-time helicopter pilots. So what we'd be looking for is experienced retired or active police helicopter pilots that would share a position at part-time basis, so no benefits. This would be a new position for the city, but once again, it's part-time without benefits. They'd basically be sharing a 40-hour-a-week position. Supervision for the program be provided by a sergeant on an ancillary basis, and the program be managed by an assigned lieutenant. And then when it comes to maintenance for the helicopter itself, well, one of the great things we have here in the city of Chino is we have a very busy general aviation airport that has a ton of services, and one of the services is contract helicopter maintenance. So helicopter maintenance would be right there at the airport and provided via a contract basis. So we're not hiring mechanics, we'd be contracting out the maintenance of the helicopter. So we spent a lot of time with our regional partners, kind of developing a mission set, or our mission sets patrol. So what would a patrol aircraft need to have? And so we went through some criteria with some help from some regional partners in developing criteria for a patrol aircraft. That's the criteria you see on the left there. Then we took that criteria and we compared it to the common police helicopters in use today. And as you'll see, looking at the chart, the Bell 505 helicopter was the only helicopter that met all of the mission requirements, but also in a cost-effective manner. So if you look at the Airbus H125, that helicopter also checked all the boxes when it comes to mission capabilities. That's the same helicopter that Ontario flies, that LAPD flies, that SBSO flies, that Riverside PD flies, Riverside County Sheriff, very popular law enforcement aircraft, but you'll see the cost exceeded what we were looking for. We kind of set like a top-end price of $600 per hour, and the cost of operating that helicopter exceeded that. So the 505 was really the only real helicopter that met all of our mission requirements, but was able to do so in a cost-effective manner. So what is the Bell 505 helicopter? Well, that's the helicopter you're looking at here on the screen. It's a helicopter that really, it's a newer design. It was first developed in 2014, but it uses a lot of legacy components from the old Jet Ranger, but it's really is a very new modern helicopter, and it offers really good performance and value. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. It's got an extremely safe, reliable, proven design, right? So the most important piece of a helicopter is that thing that spins on the top. Those are wings, they just happen to turn. So that rotor head is extremely important, and that rotor head is extremely safe and reliable design. It's designed from the ground up with law enforcement input. Some of our partners from LAPD, Bell actually brought them out in the design process to look at the interior layout of the helicopter, and what that resulted in was outstanding visibility for the tactical flight officer. It really is kind of a tactical flight officer's dream on the inside of that helicopter as far as ergonomics go and visibility. But what this really does, it allows us to carry the same mission equipment as our partner agencies, right? As Ontario and SBSO, the same camera that they use, we'll have the same camera, the same radios, the same mission mapping, the same augmented reality systems. All that's the same. We're able to accomplish that in a helicopter that costs approximately half the cost of an H125 and about 40% cheaper to operate. So that's where the cost effectiveness comes in, right? So the 505 design really changed the game and really made it a turbine-safe flying helicopter accessible at a price point that made sense for us. So when it comes to fiscal analysis, where's the money coming from to purchase a police helicopter? Well, luckily, the city had a lot of foresight, and the council approved a law enforcement development and impact fee program in 2017, foreseeing the need to purchase a helicopter, right? And so the funds to purchase the helicopter will come directly from that law enforcement development impact fee fund, right? That's money that was charged to developers. It's non-general fund restricted monies that were intended exactly for this purchase, right? So that money is set aside for this. It can only really be used for that. And also, I'll take a second to note, so we received a commitment, and we confirmed from Supervisor Kurt Hagman. San Bernardino County Supervisor Kurt Hagman is committed to provide $1 million towards the purchase of a police helicopter for the Chino Police Department. So I want to take a really second to acknowledge Supervisor Hagman's continued support of public safety in the Chino Valley. So the money to purchase the helicopter would come from those funds and from the restricted funds in DIF. The base aircraft itself, cost of purchase, is about $1.74 million. That's a just kind of helicopter with no police equipment on it. That's just a general standard Bell 505 helicopter without police equipment. It's going to cost another $1.1 million. So the cameras on these are extremely expensive, but you saw the capabilities of those cameras, the zoom capabilities, The FLIR capabilities, they're tremendous. They're geostabilized. They provide a ton of situational awareness. Kind of, you saw the Ontario video, the overlay of the streets, so it tells you exactly what street you're looking at. And as a matter of fact, it has the capability of even overlaying. We have an address points layer, or we have a very good GIS program here, thanks to our IT staff here in the city. We have a really good address GIS layer that allows us to even overlay the exact address points of apartments. So they'd be able to overlay that in that screen as well and see that. And it's going to cost another $500,000 or so for installation costs, bringing the total project cost somewhere between $3.1 and $3.4 million for purchase. So once again, non-general fund monies that were intended for this purpose. The city also has the ability to spread the capital cost over 10 years if needed through a municipal lease program. A municipal lease is different than a normal lease in the sense that it's a specific IRS program that provides reduced interest rates to the lessors because they're going to municipalities. They're not considered long-term debt because they are subject to an annual appropriation from the governing body, i.e. our city council. But that really allows us to spread the capital cost over 10 years and kind of preserve existing DIF monies. Now, we have DIF monies sufficient in our DIF funds to purchase the helicopter now, but this provides another option if we want to preserve more of the DIF monies. And the lease and interest payments are DIF eligible. The ongoing costs of the helicopter, right? So we know the purchase funds come from non-general fund restricted monies, but the ongoing costs, right? That's the variable costs, fuel maintenance part, lubricants. So those are the things that are we call turning blades in the helicopter, right? And then reserving money for overhaul. So every aircraft engine, be it an airplane or a helicopter, per the FAA requires an overhaul at some point. In this case, it's 3,000 hours for this helicopter, which is a significant amount of time. For us, that would be 3 operating years. So every 3 years, we have to pull the engine out, overhaul it, and then put it back in and continue flying the aircraft. So that overhaul reserve is covered in there. It also includes fixed costs for insurance, but not in hangar in this case. I know it says hangar, but hangar is not included in this case. The total operating cost for the helicopter each year come out to the fixed and the variable cost to about $520,000 a year. So that $520,000 includes future reserves for future maintenance, right? So the annual operating cost is sometimes lower, sometimes higher, but that $520,000 a year adjusted for inflation provides a reserve account that will be able to sustain that's program really for the life of the helicopter. The additional personnel costs, so we talked about adding the 3 to 4 part-time people sharing one full-time position. That would be an additional $120,000 a year in part-time personnel cost, bringing the total program cost to approximately $640,000 a year. That number represents about a 1.12-ish% increase to the overall police department budget. What this permits is 1,000 flight hours per year. So we want to talk about, just real quickly, I'll just talk about what that reflects. So the city of Santa Ana contracts with the Orange County Sheriff's Department for police helicopter services. They pay $539,000 a year, and they get 365 hours of flight service a year. So it represents a really good value because of the helicopter that we're recommending. So that budgeting $520,000 a year and keeping those excess funds in reserve, adjusting it for inflation allows us to continue to operate the helicopter kind of at that level cost. We do have the ability to offset operations costs. The way we would do that is that we would forego 4 future positions. So, obviously the city in 2018 did a study on, we did a study on staffing, and we know we need to add 2 to 3 officers a year. So in the year that we acquire the helicopter, we could then offset that cost by 4 future positions going forward, which represents about $600,000 a year for those 4 positions, and then that money would represent the helicopter operations cost to really kind of make it as close to fiscally non-impact to the city as possible. So partnerships, this is not something that we've done on our own. Once again, Ontario really said, hey, you guys are at the point where you need your own helicopter, and we can work together cooperatively with this. So we began that process a number of years ago. We've got a lot of mentorship. We've got a lot of support. LAPD really has provided us with a master's course in helicopter program design, maintenance, operations. We've had the benefit of having one of our local residents who was a 23-year LAPD command pilot supervisor. He ran their program and has really helped us along the way and really prepared us for this process. Ontario PD has been a phenomenal partner in this process, right? They are the ones encouraging us to kind of proceed with this. They're willing to work with us on a mutual aid basis to provide helicopter support between the two cities. So, we have a helicopter, we can help them when their helicopter's down, and they'll be able to help us when ours is down. And obviously they fly 3 helicopters, we have 1. So working together with them really kind of exponentially expands our aviation capability. And they've been working with us a long time in that process, and they've been really working with us to get to this point. SBSO has also been a big help, along with Riverside PD and some other people providing that mentorship. When it comes to training, TFO, our tactical flight officer training, our officers are able to attend LAPD's tactical flight officer school for free. We've got about 7 to 8 people who have already been through that tactical flight officer school. So we already have a cadre of people who've been to the school already. And then Ontario PD has offered to let our tactical flight officer candidates actually go fly with them and fly backseat with them and learn how to operate the same mission equipment and really learn how to do what they do so that we have a seamless operation between the two agencies. And then our program managers have completed the Airborne Public Safety Airborne Public Safety Association's Airborne Unit Managers course. It really talks about managing the program effectively, efficiently, implementing safety management systems, and plus we've learned a lot over the years of doing this. And then one thing I'd like to also comment on is the airport. So having an airport within the city limits provides us with a unique capability to not only fly from, but also maintain a helicopter program. Our fuel, our maintenance is right there on the airport. We're not flying the helicopter to Van Nuys for maintenance. We have a maintenance company that's right there that's capable of maintaining the aircraft on the airport grounds. So we're uniquely positioned to be able to operate a helicopter program. So that concludes my prepared presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions, comments? Chris, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. Well, thank you for the presentation. Very professional as always. There's always something to learn every time our staff presents something. There's always something new to learn. One thing I will say is that I appreciated that comment. It's the perfect marriage with the Real-Time Crime Center. I thought that was great. A couple questions, and it's just kind of thoughts that I had along the way. In terms of, there's a lot of illegal fireworks that happen around here. Can you talk about how a helicopter could be beneficial and, to those firework issues, or how it doesn't really apply?
It actually does, right? So the helicopter is going to be extremely important on the 4th of July, adding that airborne capability, the ability to see those fireworks going off and then getting over there, utilizing the Zoom capability, and then having those address overlays so you know exactly the house that it's coming from, and having that video evidence. Then we don't have to go and confront those people. We can simply then leave a notice on their door, hey, we saw this and we don't need that by complaint anymore. We're able to take enforcement action from the ground. So it's extremely efficient at getting places, right? That helicopter can get to anywhere in the city in a minute. So you see a bunch of fireworks going off, the helicopter is going to be there lickety-split and be able to really address that problem. So it's going to be a huge force multiplier on the 4th of July. When we already have 60, 70 sworn personnel out there in the field, a helicopter is going to make a huge difference in our enforcement capability.
Great, thank you. That's great news. And another question would be, in the preserve right now, would you say that, because that seems to be an area of issue in terms of logistics and getting units there, and has our crime in the preserve, has the crime rate is that on an increase, on a decrease? What's the crime rate like down there in the preserve?
So the crime, we break it down citywide regarding crime. The one thing that we do specifically look at, our city, we break it up for the police department in 3 reporting districts or 3 response. We have our officers divided up into 3 different sectors. And we break the preserve down, it's part of sector 3, but we even have it even more into just specifically the preserve. And then we get specifically what we're concerned about is response times. And so what my concern is what is our response time, our service? This is one thing to the preserve community where they felt disconnected, and really what was our response times. I will say, we've made a lot of progress in that area, but that is still one of our challenges is the response times down in the preserve. But as far as crime, obviously we have the school down there, which is significant. We're now growing the community. Policing the preserve is different than policing the rest of the city. And we're specifically the high-density housing and the homecoming. And that is causing some different challenges that we haven't seen in the past.
Understood. And the last question would be, have we surveyed the community about this? When you guys are out in the field or at different events, is this a program that you've surveyed the community with?
No, we haven't done any outreach. This is the first outreach is bring it to council for direction. But certainly, just like our UAS program, we have approval to move forward. It's something we'll definitely involve the community in for input and obviously education. So,
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, those are my questions for now, Mayor.
Aaron, don't speak in acronyms like UAS, okay?
I'm
Say
sorry,
the
I speak
words.
FAA sometimes, ma'am. It's a whole different, federal aviation regulation is a whole different language we had to learn.
I know, but we don't know that.
Yeah, unmanned aircraft systems are drones.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Mark?
I appreciate the presentation. I know that we've had obviously some critics that have come from the community that have talked about this and talked about some failed aviation, like some cities that have launched the aviation program and failed. Can you speak on what the issues were there that we're looking at to make sure that we don't do that here if we do move forward?
So the number one problem with aviation units who don't succeed is they don't accurately predict costs, right? So the cost becomes more than what it is. The other problem that they have is stat tracking. So they're not tracking stats enough to show return on investment, right? It doesn't decrease the need for it. They just don't have the stats to justify it. A perfect example is Costa Mesa and Newport. When that program fell apart, Costa Mesa City Council queried for them stats from their joint program. They didn't have it. Both those cities now have to contract with another city for airborne law enforcement because the need didn't go away. So they're getting less bang for their buck than they would have otherwise gotten because they weren't tracking stats. So being accurate about your stats, what you're out there doing, being proactive, being visible, being used, that's another issue. And then being accurate with predictions on the money. That's why we want to be upfront with the cost of this. We're not telling you, hey, it's going to cost $200,000 a year, and then turn around and saying year 3, I want to need $600,000 a year. We want to be very accurate on predicting the costs so that we can do an accurate benefit analysis.
And projecting how big our city is going to be between 140 and 150,000, the cities that have aviation program, are they generally about as big as we are going to be?
So Southern California is super unique, right? So if you take 8 police agencies in Southern California, you compare them to the rest of the nation, we have a significantly lower per capita police presence than the rest of the nation, the national average, including our city. So you'll take the big one out here, LAPD, right? So you take LAPD, they have about 2.4 officers per 1,000 residents. NYPD has 4.22 officers per 1,000 residents. LA is one of the lowest per capita staff major cities in the US. And you go, well, how do they do that, right? And so LAPD has 18 police aircraft. They deploy police aircraft 20 hours a day, 2 to 3 helicopters up in the air a day. They utilize a significant force multiplier of the aircraft to provide patrol service. As a matter of fact, LAPD estimates they needed about an additional 2,000 to 4,000 officers to replace their air support division because of it. And so you see that same thing happen throughout Southern California. Why? Because our population is great. California is the most populous state in the nation. It's also the third by size. So you have a lot of people spread over a large area. And so back east, if anybody been to New York, you'll know, right? There's a cop on every corner. That's how they police. That's how they provide their police service there. They station police officers. But out here, that's not the way that it's done. It requires some sort of mobilized patrol to be able to patrol large areas, right? And so city of Chino being 30 square miles, if you look at other cities comparatively to us in Southern California that have police services, the city of Lakewood is the longest operating police helicopter patrol program in the nation. They're a contract city for Los Angeles County Sheriffs, but in the 60s they started the Sky Knight program. The city of Lakewood to this day still operates 2 police helicopters just for the city of Lakewood. They kind of started the trend in using police helicopters. City of Hawthorne runs a 4-day-a-week police helicopter program, so very similar in size to the city of Chino as far as population and budget-wise goes. Size-wise, they're a lot smaller. So El Monte has police helicopters, Ontario has police helicopters, Fontana has police helicopters, Long Beach, Anaheim, Riverside County Sheriff, San Diego County Sheriff, Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena, all employ police helicopters because everybody in Southern California staff like they have helicopter support, just a lot of agencies don't. So it's almost a necessity in Southern California. It's not really a luxury. That's why you see so many agencies that have them.
I don't have anything else for now.
Lieutenant Keller, great job with the presentation. I, every single thing that we covered tonight in this presentation is real to us and we have encountered. And you're correct, we've been studying this for a long time. I do believe there's a law of timing in things. And the continued urbanization, not just of our community, but the communities around us. I mean, there was a time when you got past the 15 freeway on either the 60 or the 10, and there was nothing. And again, using your words, if you don't have to believe me, just get on the 15 freeway at any given time of day, generally speaking, and try and go north or south. I think these resources, if the council decided to proceed with this, are necessary or timely. My question is, how long does it take to actually, if we were to decide to proceed to implement this program, when would we see services being provided?
That's a really good question. So from the time that we get approval to move forward, somewhere between 18 months and 2 years to get the bid process done, to get a helicopter in process, to get the helicopter delivered, and then to get it completed with the law enforcement equipment, get the program stood up is about 18 months to 2 years. It's not a short term, it's a project that takes some time to get going.
Certainly. So that being said, with the things that you've laid out, the threats that are in our community presently and are going to continue as the community becomes more densely populated, the issues that we have with crime now, the prison, and in addition to that, just the safety that it can provide to our personnel on the ground is phenomenal. And I don't quite know if you can put a price on that for our people. Is it expensive? Yes, it's very expensive. But also the ability to protect our field personnel on the ground as well as our residents. If we have an incident at the prison and we'll have another escape at one point. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Being able to put these resources up in the air when that escapee is potentially in somebody's backyard or committing a carjacking and getting eyes on, there's no real price tag you can put on that. And so I think this was a great presentation tonight, and thank you.
Curtis?
Lieutenant Kelleher, thank you very much for that information. It's very insightful. You know, being a police officer here for 30 years, I'm aware of a lot of incidents and issues that we have had here in this city over the years that we certainly could have used that helicopter. And for the benefit of everybody that's here and that's listening, why don't we continue to use San Bernardino County Sheriff's helicopter for our air support? And then the second half, do we pay for that contract, or do we have a contract, or is that or do they give that to us as a mutual aid situation?
Yeah, so obviously the property taxes from San Bernardino County residents fund the Sheriff's Department as well. And so we do receive law enforcement helicopter services from the Sheriff's Department. I don't think there's a direct cost from the Sheriff's Department for that. However, it's the largest county in the nation, right, by geographic area. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Aviation is based out of San Bernardino. They're coming from the San Bernardino Airport. Their published flight time on the ground ready to go to get out here is over 15 minutes. So not to mention the fact that their resources are strained. It's tough for them to make it all the way out here. They've got to navigate through Ontario's airspace. They got to get off the ground there. They got to get around and get over here. And then you got to deal with priority, right? So just like we handle calls in order priority, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Aviation handles calls in order priority. And there's a lot going on in San Bernardino, Colton, and Rialto that cause them to attend up there, not to mention everything that's going on in the high desert with Apple Valley and Victorville. So it's not a reliable, when you're on the ground for 15 and 20 minutes waiting for a helicopter, Is it better than nothing? Certainly, but certainly there's a lot going on in those 15 to 20 minutes, as you saw. We saw 3 minutes at that San Diego video of a 6-minute video, and that seemed like forever. So that's exactly what it feels like on the ground. So the problem with just relying on San Bernardino County Sheriff is extended ETAs and their availability, and then their need to have to clear quickly for calls to go to other agencies.
I appreciate that, and this is absolutely no dig on San Bernardino County Sheriff. They do a phenomenal job with their air support program, but again, I know personally, being on the ground, they are out throughout the entire county, and they might be in Colton 1 minute and then over in Rialto the next moment, and then we might have a situation out here in Chino and they fly out here to the extreme west end of the county, and they can only provide a couple of minutes of support to us because they've run out of fuel. Then they've got to leave and go get fuel. Again, no dig on them. They do a great job, but are they really that efficient to us as much as our own program would be? Absolutely not. But it's better than nothing.
One other thing to touch on is San Bernardino County Sheriff's also responsible for search and rescue in the county of San Bernardino. They spend a lot of time flying search and rescue. It really is kind of their primary. They also do first-in firefighting. So they have a lot of demands on their emergency operations air support division. It's not just that. I mean, they have a hoist on the side of their helicopter for a reason. They're constantly rescuing people off of Baldy and Mount San Gregorio, and out in the desert. So they're strained. Their aviation operation is strained.
And I appreciate you saying that. And having said that, would our helicopter program be able to assist our fire department with people that maybe have fallen into a channel and went down, the waterways within the city to get eyes on them?
Certainly for spotting and emergency assistance, providing locating people. The actual rescues would still have to be performed by a much larger aircraft that has additional capabilities and specialized training for that as well. So we certainly provide that service to the fire department if needed to help locate. If they see a smoke burning in the hills in Chino Hills, they're obviously going to fly over there and detect that and provide direction to the fire department. And, hey, here's what you got going on. But firefighting and rescue, that's not a capability we would have unless we made some different investments in aircraft.
And I know that if we were able to get this program up and running, they would be constantly patrolling our city. But would the helicopter also be available to assist our officers on investigations and/or search warrants in other cities? Or would we have to depend on other agencies' air support to help that out?
So let me use one example where it would have been used, and that is in October when we had a SWAT search warrant in the city of Rialto that led to an attempt murder on one of our officers. If we had a helicopter, we would have deployed that helicopter for that. We did have a drone up in the air, and that was better than nothing. But if that helicopter would have been flown up in the air and seen that suspect run out of the back door armed with a handgun, could immediately radio that to the officer that was in the rear. And if you remember watching that video, that suspect jumped up on the wall and fired first at our officer, and then we had to return fire and could have potentially seen that armed suspect running by the back wall.
Right. And I know the helicopter is in the air, but in the event that there is a major emergency on the ground where there are victims that are in need of immediate attention and/or our police officers are in immediate danger, is the helicopter available to land and the TFO to get out to assist the officer and/or maybe a victim that needs assistance immediately if the situation is safe? Could they land the helicopter?
Absolutely. It's one of the unique capabilities of a helicopter versus an airplane. That helicopter can land anywhere there's sufficient room, and they're able to do that safely and get out and assist. And the tactical flight officer is armed. The helicopter has the ability of carrying a rifle in it as well. so they can, just like a patrol officer, have the same equipment and get out there and intervene. A really good example of that is there was a CHP officer who was tragically shot and critically injured and eventually died, but the Riverside police helicopter landed on a freeway overpass and scooped up that CHP officer and took him to a higher level of care, trying to save their life. So it's fully capable of that. This helicopter is unique. It has a flat floor, so it's completely modular. Those back seats pop out in 30 seconds, and then you have a completely modular flat floor cabin, so you can transport people, supplies in emergency, including critically injured people, our canines. That was one of the things that we've trained a lot with our canines to fly to emergency vet care in case a canine's injured. The nearest trauma vet care for something like that is down in Irvine. So getting one of our police dogs in an event of emergency to critical care, helicopter would be used for that as well.
Thank you for that. I have a question in reference to our DIF fund this started before I came onto the council, so forgive me, I don't know the information. How much do we currently have in that fund, if we're able to know that and gain that information?
Somewhere around about $4 million in DIF right now for law enforcement.
And how much would it be just for the helicopter? 3 million or something like that? Isn't that what you said?
So we anticipate somewhere between 3.1 and 3.4 million. We won't know for sure until we go out to bid, but that's what we anticipate. And once again, we have that $1 million commitment from Kurt Hagman as well. So somewhere between 2.1 and 2.4 million from the DIF.
And I really would like to thank Supervisor Hagman for dedicating $1 million to this very worthwhile program. And speaking about the 4 officers that you had brought up about maybe foregoing these 4 positions to be able to offset the cost of this helicopter program, I kind of think about that, and I think about a lot of people may think that a helicopter would be enhancing our current police department in some way, shape, or form, and I agree with that. However, I think that it is an enhancement. This is a program that we have needed for many, many years. And when you look at a chocolate sundae, in my opinion, you put the chocolate syrup on top of the vanilla ice cream. The vanilla ice cream alone will taste great, but you're going to enhance it with the chocolate syrup. But you need the main ingredient, and I think our helicopter program would be a main ingredient. And the 4 officers we would not have to forego those officers. And that's kind of a weird analogy, the way I just kind of brought that up. But soft serve, hand scoop. But I don't think it's an enhancement. I think it's a necessary ingredient that we have been without for many, many years. So we need this helicopter, and we need those 4 officers to provide the support that we need on the ground. So, Lieutenant, thank you very much. I appreciate the information. And, Mayor, I don't have any other questions. If you have ice cream later, though, I'd be interested in talking to you.
I do have one more comment.
I have never heard our police department compared to a Sunday.
Councilmember Burton, I just want to thank you for articulating some of those points. Also, having worked at the police department for so long, it was always very frustrating for many years to not get proper air support, not just for the safety of our personnel, but just the mission in wanting to apprehend criminals or help the public or keep them safe. So it's long overdue. I agree with you, Kurt. There is a tipping point where we do have to be able to show the residents that it's necessary and the timing is right. And we've been looking probably 18 months to 2 years out, and those needs are only going to increase during that time period. So, but it was very frustrating for many years because of the demands from the county to not be able to have proper air support to our personnel.
Well, Aaron, you and I have gone back and forth for many years about this program. And I have to tell you, listening to you tonight, you could sell ice to an Eskimo.
Ice cream.
Or ice cream. You have done an excellent job. But I have scribblings all over this paper. I will try to ask all my different questions. But I would like an opportunity to maybe put all of this in writing. And Linda, if we could have, maybe not another workshop, but an opportunity to rediscuss some things and clarify things. You know I have to ask a million questions. And you know I'm always the one that has to go deep and be really convinced about stuff. So I will try to go through my notes. When it comes to foregoing the 4 officers, you know, we already know that we're going to need the retail theft unit, and we know we're going to need SROs for the elementary school. And I don't think those numbers were included in past year's projections on what we needed, because we only thought we needed, what, Karen, the study you had done, like 2 officers a year moving forward. So while you say foregoing 4 officers would take care of the cost of the helicopter, I don't think we can forego those officers. I don't think it would be good for our communities. So can you explain to me who you think you would forego?
So part of the staffing plan, when I presented it to the city manager back in March, and it came out from the staffing analysis from 2018 based on land use, and it was that 2 to 3. This was done, like I said, 2018, 2 to 3 officers per year. We looked at where our officers, our staffing was currently, and then I worked with the city manager, and I built that out, and I provided her with a 5-year plan. I included, and that is a 5-year, whether it be a patrol officer or whether it be a retail theft officer. Obviously, those things are going to change. Today it was retail theft. 2 years ago, it was catalytic converters. If you were to ask me, I need more officers, I would have assigned to a catalytic converter team. I don't know what's going to happen in 2 more years. However, I also asked for, in this current staffing one, I asked for additional patrol officers on top of the school resource officer and the retail theft. So, and that all is equated into that 2 to 3 officers per year based on the land use. So it is filtered in. It's a combination of looking at it, whether it be a traffic officer, whether it be a detective, or whether it be an actual patrol officer. This one is, obviously, it's factored into our patrol officers. It's not in immediately year 1, we're gonna subtract 4 officers, but as it goes in year 2 and year 3.
I also was part of that staffing project, Mayor, and I do believe we gave ourselves different options. I think the options were, I can't remember what the total staffing allocation was, but for some reason, 168 stands out in my mind. We could also opt to continue to staff our department properly over the next few years because our needs are going to continue, but at the end, cut the staffing, that anticipated number, shorter, as we met our needs moving along. So I think we did actually in that study give ourselves a couple different options to offset those costs, because I was actually a part of that staffing presentation.
Yeah, so the staffing study that we did in 2018 is based on the DIF formula. So the DIF consultant, when they were calculating costs, right, they have to project out to build out based on the general plan as it existed, in this case in 2012. So that 168 was maintaining the level of service the city had in 2012. If you want to do that, you're going to need 168 officers at build out. It doesn't factor in annexations. It doesn't factor in increases in density. It doesn't factor in a change in land use. It also doesn't factor in additional capabilities, so like school resource officers, right? So say you want to expand that program, that's not factored into that. It's factored into you just need the X amount of officers to maintain that. So that 2 to 3 officers per year is an average until build out occurs. And so it depends on when you think build out it's going to occur, about how many officers you have. There's also some years we don't add officers, so you have that carryover. So I think the 4 that we got in this one brought us to right at the target number that we should have been at.
Are we going, Linda, are we going to update our diff
Yes,
when
yes.
it comes to policing?
Well, we're going to update our Nexus study and our diff. And our hope is this year or next to do that, because that needs to be updated. It's been quite some time.
I would not want this program, if we choose to move forward, I would not want this program to negatively impact what we also need on the ground, to do what we need to do for our community. I think that would be a disservice. Oh gosh, I have so many questions. Okay, you say they would have 10 hours a day, 4 days a week, only 5 hours of flight time. How do you determine what days and how many hours, and what do you do when they're not on duty, when you need a helicopter?
So that's a great question. So we're looking at our highest concentration of priority P call times, right? The number one deliverable we talked about is reduction in priority P, which is our highest level of call response times. So the helicopter would be deployed where we see, and we would evaluate it every 6 months like we do normally with the schedule, and look at and say, okay, has our call for service for priority P shifted? And then we would adjust the helicopter hours and days to those days. So right now it would be like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, from about 9 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. And they would come in at 9 and they would pre-flight the aircraft and get it ready to go. At 10 o'clock, they would launch, and if there's no calls going on between 9 and 10 that require a helicopter, would launch for a patrol flight between 10 and 12. And they'd be on the ground from 12 to 2. Between 2 and 3 is when school lets out and we get some additional issues. The helicopter launches again and flies patrol flight between 2 and 3. They would land from 3 to 4. And then from 4 to 6 during our commute time, the helicopter would be back up in the air, providing that airborne support during those busy call times. And they'd be down from 6 to 7. All the times that they're down on the ground, they'd be available for call, immediate support. And then we'd also be able to call Ontario for mutual aid air support. If we're on the ground and they're in the air, they'd be able to respond as well. So that is what we would do. That's how we would supplement it. And so we're there during the busiest call times. When they're not available, they are subject to being called in. We could get a flight crew in an hour and have that helicopter up in the air, managing critical incidents and responding to things if we need to.
So the tactical flight officer, darn it, you would only need one?
One full-time, because it's a 40-hour-a-week program, so there would be one officer full-time assigned to that. That's their primary duty. They would transfer that position from patrol, and then they'd be assigned their full-time. And then we'd have 3 to 4 backup tactical flight officers, so people who have been to the school, who have been trained by Ontario, who fly a couple of days a month to maintain currency, who are there for relief. So the tactical flight officer calls in sick, has vacation, has a baby, is out. We were able to substitute in the ancillary tactical backup flight officer, so we have uninterrupted coverage. And the same thing goes for having 3 to 4 part-time pilots. You have one on vacation, you have one sick, you still have 2 more that you can draw on. So we're not personnel downing the aircraft. The aircraft's available, has maximum availability based on that staffing.
So if it's a day that the helicopter isn't being used and the TFO has a 40-hour week, does he come in and do other things?
Patrol. Yeah, so that's one of the benefits too, having the part-time pilots. We have a aircraft is down for maintenance for a couple of days. That tactical flight officer goes back to patrol, and we don't call in the pilot. The pilot doesn't come to work. So that's the plan.
The Bell 505. Why don't other agencies change to the 505 since it's less expensive and appears to be a better machine?
Another great question. So that's a really good question. So a lot of these agencies have already have a 125. So they look at stepping the A-star. They look at the Bell 505 as kind of a step down. It does carry a little bit less useful load, and it goes about 10 knots slower, so it's not as fast. Can't carry as much useful load. So is the 125 more, the A-Star more capable? Certainly by that measure it is, but for a pure patrol mission. We're not doing SWAT team, airborne use of force. We're not rappelling off the top of mountains. This is a patrol-based helicopter. Its performance is really good for that. Why other agencies don't use it? It's new to the market. The A-Star kind of is been the tried and true product in the law enforcement market for a very long time. LAPD is a complete A-Star fleet. They used to have Jet Rangers. The 505 is the Jet Ranger X. It's the evolution of the Jet Ranger. But there's a lot more agencies that are going to it because of its cost effectiveness. Peoria, Arizona is just contracted for a Bell 505. There's a couple agencies in California, Stockton, Sacramento, Alameda County Sheriff. There's a sheriff's department in Northern California that had one as well. There's a couple agencies in the Midwest. Fort Worth just bought their second one. Omaha Police Department, Nebraska State Patrol, Florida Department of Fish and Wildlife, Leon County Sheriff's. There's a lot of agencies that are going to it because they're realizing the cost effectiveness to it. But when you already have a bigger, you know, I say it's the Cadillac Hyundai Elantra, right? So the A-Star is really the Cadillac, but the Bell 505 is a really solid Hyundai that can get the job done and do it more cost effectively. Why are more agencies don't do it? It's a really good question. But you know, we're certainly not asking for that super top line. We want to make sure that we're able to deliver the service, but do so in the most cost effective manner possible.
You said the load is less. How would that impact us?
Yes.
Distance, where the Bell primarily is going to be here and within our 30-mile radius and continue to patrol here and not traveling the long distance. So they don't need the bigger gas tank to have more fuel on board. So that's where it makes more sense to have a smaller aircraft instead of a larger aircraft. And then also we do they do some transport sometimes. So where the bigger helicopter, you know, they may be able to move people to another location. So that's where, for the Sheriff's Department, it was a better pick, was the A-Star, was because it was a larger aircraft, faster, and then they fly more hours. So you have, you know, crews that work during the day, you have crews that work at night, and, you know, they have 22 helicopters, but they rotate them, and then they have them in 3 different, and like San Bernardino County, they deployed them from 3 different areas. So you had some helicopters that were stationed in Long Beach, you had some helicopters that were stationed at Brackett, which is in Laverne, and then you had some that were up in Van Nuys that cover the high desert. So unlike LA County had specific aircrafts to cover different parts of the county, San Bernardino doesn't. So they don't stage a helicopter way down here to cover these West End cities. So that's where we lack. And the bigger helicopters make sense for them, and the smaller helicopters make more sense for us because we don't have those capabilities that we need. We don't need those things, so.
Okay.
It makes more sense that they're not asking for the Cadillac. And it's more expensive to maintain and everything else.
When you talked about air support for street racing, and you mentioned that you could get information from the helicopter and the officers don't have to confront the drivers, right? And that you would follow up later and serve paperwork. Helicopters can't get, unless you coordinate with the LPRs, you wouldn't be able to get license plates, would
No,
you?
yeah, those cameras are tremendous on the helicopters now. Those cameras are capable of zooming in and getting extremely good detail. So yeah, you can get those license plates, you zoom in, you read them, and then you record that information. And then the helicopter, we are dispersing those street racers along with the ground units, but we're not trying to stop the people and tow their cars right there. We're getting them out of the area to clear out the problem for the community, and then we're following up the next day with our traffic investigators to serve the seizure orders. So when they're asleep at home, we're going with a tow truck and towing their cars out of their front yards with a seizure order. That's a really effective way to address the problem while also managing the public safety confrontation issue.
Okay. You talked about the 10-year lease, but yet we're going to buy it. How do you lease and buy?
It's optional, either or.
Was it either or?
It's either or. It's just an option that, you know, if we wanted to spread those costs over 10 years, we have the ability to. The municipal lease is an option, or we can buy it outright, either way.
Which is the wisest thing to do? How long does a helicopter last?
So helicopters can last indefinitely as long as they're properly maintained. There is no end of useful life. Some agencies say, hey, we do them at 12 years, 15 years, 20 years. There really just depends on when the cost to maintain the aircraft exceeds the efficiency that it provides, then you want to consider getting a new one. So as they get older, they get more expensive to maintain. That's why, you know, buying an old aircraft, right, buying a used aircraft may seem attractive up front, but it puts you into the expensive portion early on before you've had a chance to build up your reserve account over time. Same thing with getting, you know, helicopters from the military. They're very expensive to maintain and hard to get parts for. So maintenance is the big thing. And starting with a new aircraft, you get the cheaper hours of operation out of that aircraft from having it when it's brand new. So either one works, buying or municipal leasing. They both work. And in this situation, it really is kind of discretion of council. If they want to preserve some of that DIF money, we can do that, or we don't need to. We can buy it either way. It has no effect on the actual aircraft.
Since the Bell 505 is fairly new, you really don't have history on its longevity yet?
That's another good question. Yes, so while it's technically a clean sheet design on the aircraft, the important parts, the rotor head, the tail rotor, right, those are from a legacy aircraft. That's from the old Bell Jet Ranger, the Long Ranger, very tried and true system. The avionics inside it's all glass cockpit, meaning that, I mean, literally, it's a push button to start, kind of like a Tesla. So it's got a completely computer-controlled engine system in it. That is very tried and true. The engine itself is a French engine. It's called from Safran. So it's the same helicopter engine that's been around for many years. It's the same family. It's got over 1 million hours on that engine family. So everything in it's tried and true. It's, like I said, it's about a 10-year-old aircraft design. Sacramento has the highest flying 505 in the nation, and they absolutely love it. So we've been up there, we visited them and spent time with them, and it's been a great addition. They had old Bell Jet Rangers, so that is their primary aircraft now.
Okay. Now, you talked about DIF, and I know we were thinking about using the DIF to build our substation. So what's going on now with the substation and the hangar attached to it?
That's our next presentation. That's the part 2 of this, is the substation, and we're going to go over that as well after we finish the questions with this air support.
Oh, okay. Oh, let's see. I asked Linda for some information about Ontario, and she sent it to me, but I haven't had a chance to really go through it. But it looks like they have 3 helicopters, right? It looks like their cost, not including PERS and stuff, because they have full-time people, is about $600,000-800,000 a year, which you're saying ours would be about $600,000 a year, right? 640?
Including personnel, yeah. Ontario's full-time personnel complement alone is in the millions of dollars. They have,
That's why I backed it out.
you know, the personnel costs, the operations costs. They fly somewhere on the average of 700 hours per airframe, so almost 2,000 hours a year, and they're about $650-something an hour on those airframes on average. So I don't know that number is accurate. As far as the information, as far as what they spend on actual aircraft operations, I could double check, but that number sounds very low considering what they're flying and how much they're flying. And they have full-time mechanics as well, and
Looks
pretty
like
big
the
operation.
whole approved budget was like 4.7 million, but that was with loaded PERS and everything.
And also, they may be budgeting for yearly actuals as well, as far as the maintenance operation account. You know, so that number will fluctuate every year given how much where they're at in aircraft. I mean, the aircraft purchase alone is about $6 million for a similarly outfitted H-125 versus a 3.4 for a 505, but the operations costs are significantly lower. It's about 40% cheaper to fly a 505 than a 125. That's just, the numbers don't make a lot of sense unless they're not reserving. So we're reserving that money every year, so we're not coming back and having these big spikes in costs every third year.
Okay. Well, I think with all my fireworks. I have heard, and I know up in our area, it's insane at 4th of July, especially in Ontario. So I don't think their helicopters are helping much with fireworks. So have you been able to talk to them at all about if they're able to use their helicopters and do any enforcement in Ontario?
They do, and they are super effective at it. So that definitely helps them out. They definitely use it. They fly way above. I know it looks like the fireworks are going way up high, but the helicopters are flying at about 800 feet at night, so they're nowhere near that. So they're able to fly on top of that and see exactly what's going on. So they are super effective for their 4th of July. They don't have the same problems we have because we have a lot more because of what goes on here, because of the history we have here, but they're definitely able to spot it.
Well, I'll tell you what, where we live, and we border Ontario and Montclair, it's a war zone. That, especially in the county area, it is crazy. So if they're using their helicopter, I wish you'd tell them to come closer in our area, because they're
I
not
know them very well. I'll
effective.
pass it along.
They're not very effective over there.
I also don't think they had an enforcement program for several years. I don't think they enacted a fine program until Chief Williams was there. So we've been actually longer at also.
They are way behind when it comes to the fireworks and the enforcement, the campaign, and I mean we made a seizure last week. We're already doing fireworks enforcement. It's not the same priority.
They're
and the
very
concern
new
as Ontario.
into the enforcement perspective of it now.
They're already going off in our neighborhood. Now, there's no danger of those great big aerial ones hitting a helicopter?
No, they're way above that. So they're 800 to 1,000 feet at night. So those things are about the 250, 300 foot marks. They don't even really go as high. They're about that high. It's deceptive. It's very hard to judge altitude with things. Believe me, we spend a lot of time saying, hey, that thing looks like it's going to hit our drone, and it's nowhere near it. So.
Okay, one more question. Chris had asked about the crime rate in the preserve. Is it increasing?
The calls for service are increasing, but I don't think the crime rate, and I went on there, I think just 2 days ago on our crime mapping. You could go on crimemapping.com and you can see, then I went on and I looked at our last 7 days. And there's, we have theft. Our theft is increasing citywide. I've talked about that significantly, and unfortunately the preserve is not immune to that. They're seeing some of that same theft. But the one thing is, what is increasing is the call volume. And the call volume specifically related to, a lot of it is the homecoming and some of the high-density housing that is down there, just because it's growing. The population is growing, and so it's not surprisingly. But it's not, if we're seeing a spike in crime reference something, we're addressing that, especially if it's from an apartment complex. We're addressing that with management. But we're not seeing like a spike in crime coming from specifically. No different than just crime rising throughout the entire city, specifically related to theft.
Well, we now have a shopping center down there with another one to open soon across the street. Are you anticipating more retail theft down in that area?
We are. I met with Johnny. He's the Stater Brothers manager down there about 3 weeks ago. And I talked to him, and he says he is now starting to see an increase of theft. What's one thing we reiterated to Johnny, was please call us, because it came to find out, because we immediately, once he says he saw theft increasing, we came back and we ran our stats, and our stats didn't reflect that. So the challenge we have is and again, it works against us because you pull up our stats and it looks like our crime is going up, but we need to know it needs to be reported so we can dedicate our resources to where the problem is. But according to Johnny, talking to him a few weeks ago, yes, he's now starting to see some of the same theft that we saw. And we met with the manager of the Stater Brothers at Yorba and Riverside, and they saw, I think it was $40,000 of shrinkage in one quarter. So, I talked about it at council meeting. Our retail theft last year was up 53%. In our first quarter, it's already up an additional 15%. So but it is a statewide issue.
So a helicopter would help that, and especially the new Stater Brothers being near Eastvale and those big wide streets in the 15 freeway.
It is, and now, if you go back in time, and that was a really good picture that Aaron showed, there was although we bordered Eastville for a very long time because there was no development between the two of us, it was almost like we didn't communicate with them, we didn't really work with them, because there was so much difference, so much open land between the two of us, and now those houses are housing from Chino and Eastville has come up and is married right there at, right at Hellman. So we're seeing them. I've introduced myself to the new chief at Eastville, the captain there. We talked, and we have a meeting planned so we can start same issues we've been ongoing with Chino Hills, where we've worked with them for so long that we need to do the same thing with Eastville because the criminals, as you know, they bounce around from city to city.
I know this doesn't have anything to do with helicopters, but are they going to get LPRs, and are they going to coordinate with us?
So Eastville does have LPRs,
They do.
and we do have access to their footage. We actually have some of our LPRs mounted right there at Hellman and Schleisman, or Hellman and Pine, mounted in Eastville. But there are our LPRs because we got them first and we wanted them up. But they have them up in their city and their flock. So we share the same. You share the same data.
Well, that might be all the questions I have at this minute, but I know I'm going to think of more. Yes, Kurt?
Lieutenant, just a couple more questions I'm thinking about. When it comes to Ontario International Airport, what kind of communications would we have with them? Because the airplanes take off in a westerly direction. I would imagine we'd be in contact with their tower. Is that correct? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a very complicated airspace over the city of Chino. So 80% of our city is in controlled airspace, either through the Chino Airport or Ontario Airport. So Ontario, obviously, once again, being our partners, walking us through this process. They're very familiar with both airspace, both towers. Both towers are very supportive of law enforcement operations. They give priority to law enforcement aircraft. Navigating with the tower is not going to be a problem. We're going to get to where we need to go. They'll get us under, over, and around wherever we need to be as far as approach corridors go. It's not a problem to operate in this airspace with law enforcement aircraft. They're very familiar. They're very friendly. We've worked with them in the past with our UAS operations. We have extremely good relationships with both towers. And that's important. I mean, you got to know the controllers. They got to know you, and they have that level of trust, and they'll let you get into where you need to go.
Thank you. And then one more question. If we were able to get this program up and running, would there be a possibility that other cities such as Montclair and or Chino Hills may want to contract air support services with the city of Chino because just of where we are instead of San Bernardino County Sheriff? And if so, could we put something together that may offset our costs for the entire program?
It's certainly possible. We're open to that possibility. One of the things the challenges, like we talked about Costa Mesa and Newport, they had a really successful program until one city decided they weren't going to do it anymore. And so it kind of unwound the whole program. So having the ability to do it by yourself is still important to maintain that capability, but certainly we could offer that service, and if somebody wants to pay for it, and really they should pay their fair share of it if they're going to receive it on a regular basis, because as you can tell, it's not inexpensive to do.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm glad you asked that, because that was another note that I had that I missed.
And to piggyback off of what he said, so the city of Lakewood has Skynight. They've run that program even before LA County had their own air support system. And initially, the 5 cities all contracted with them. So you had Cerritos, you had Lakewood, you had Artesia, Bellflower, and Paramount all contracted helicopter services with them. But as money got tight, if they didn't have enough money to fund it themselves, cities started dropping out. The Cerritos dropped out, and Paramount, and they started saying, well, since we play for the sheriffs anyway, the sheriff should be providing us air support anyway. And then Lakewood still maintains their program because they were always able to do it on their own, and they didn't do it as something that offset their costs so much that they relied on that budget to be able to pay for their system. So that's why it's important to be able to do this on our own, because if we do take on additional contracts, just, things get tight, that's one of the first things people cut. They'll just say, well, we'll just ask for mutual aid, and these people will come up here and help us anyway. And yes, we will, because ultimately, it's on a public safety standpoint, we're always going to want to help out our partners out there, but at the same time, it cuts us when it comes to money. So that's why it's important that if this is something that we're going to go on to, that we go into it knowing that we're going to probably be alone on it. If we do pick up additional contracts, that's great, but we shouldn't rely on those contracts so much that if we don't have those contracts, then we're not able to support the system.
I have an additional comment on that too, Mayor. One of the things we went through when we constructed the new police facility was actually the range. And there was lots of discussions about when we opened our range, like, well, can we contract to other agencies? Because at the time we were actually, when we moved our range operations from the California Institute for Men down to the Corona range, it was out of necessity because of just the time that you're moving your own equipment. We were spending more time schlepping ammo and targets down to Corona versus just being able to get into our range and train. And then the other thing is that takes wear and tear off of our operation as well as with the range. And the other thing is we want to be able to use our range. And remarkably, because of the amount of training that we do, like, we would help partners if we needed to. If they desperately needed range training, we have hosted rifle classes and different things to help other agencies get properly equipped. But you'd be surprised when you start talking about the maintenance and different things, how that cuts into our operation to provide the fundamental service that we want to our community. To Councilmember Lucio's point, we're not going to tell somebody no if you have a critical incident or an officer down or something of that nature where the mutual aid, when that alarm goes off, the people are coming. It's an understood expectation within law enforcement. But when you do get into that, in addition to if you can't afford it, it does take an impact to where we want those resources here in our city. And if somebody is contracting with us, it could take it away from our city when we need it in our city most.
Would there be a possibility of a charge of hourly or whatever in case of emergencies? I would imagine you could have some kind of an agreement with that.
That is kind of what currently exists with Ontario. They maintain the ability to bill people if they need to. So yeah, we would definitely have that capability to say, well, hey, if you want to accept, you request our helicopter, you want to accept their services, we would, if that was the direction of council, we would establish a billing practice to establish, an hourly operating cost on average, and then provide that on a per call per minute basis is definitely an option that we could hold out there to recover costs as well, if we needed to.
I think we should keep that option open. I understand what you're saying about having an actual contract of hours. We maybe wouldn't want to do that, but at least be available if they needed it, and then reimburse our direct costs.
It's a pretty standard practice, Mayor.
Okay. Any other comments before we go on to the next item? Well, like I said, Aaron, you're able to sell ice to an Eskimo. Good job. Okay, item number 2, Southeast Area Police Substation Update. Receive a presentation and update on the Southeast Area Substation Project and provide additional direction to staff. Once again, Chief Manson and Lieutenant Kelleher.
Well, good evening, Madam Mayor, member of councils, members of the council. It's an honor to come before you with this as well. The Southeast Area Substation Project is something that we've been working on for a long time as well. It is also a DIF project. It was identified in DIF as Project LE01, the purpose of which was to provide residents in the southeast area of the city improved access to police services, namely the Preserve and College Park. Really to provide a facility to enable officers to remain in the area, to meet with the residents, keeping those police resources down in those areas, and also providing additional staffing opportunities with our professional staff, with motor officers, commercial enforcement, the ability to take counter reports, to request report copies, vehicle releases, things that they generally have to travel up to the main police facility now to provide that, to provide a facility whereupon those services can be provided. And so we had identified, well, what's right in between both of those communities, the airport. So the airport was identified as centrally located, easily accessible for both communities. Gave us the ability to utilize existing construction, thereby reducing overall project costs. Location at the airport also provides a location for a future air support unit that was addressed in the original project. So in 2022, the council provided direction to explore a design and build project as one of the 4 options in that original project. So we were anticipating to get the land at low or no cost from the airport. That did not come to fruition. The number for the land lease kept going down, but it kind of bottomed out about $43,000 per year. That provided a 40-year lease term with a 9-year extension. You can't own the land at the airport. It's federally subsidized, so therefore you can only ground lease. You can build there, but you can only ground lease the land. After 40 years and the 9-year extension, the buildings and the improvements would convey to the county pursuant to the FAA regulations on the airport. So the building costs were originally looking at $4.5 to $5 million. That's gone through a couple of iterations. At one point, we were looking at $7 million to $9 million. The recent cost updates are now between $10 and $15 million and rapidly approaching the $15 million mark. So based on this significant increase in project costs and the extended time frame, which remains to be about a 5 to 7 year project, we wanted to come back to council for additional direction. We're looking for a long-term solution that can control costs, and we would like to explore leasing an existing facility, thereby reducing the overall capital costs. There are a couple of existing facilities on the airport which are suitable for the project goals. One is on Calero, the other set is on Merrill. There'll be some additional new construction along Merrill that would have the ability to provide a suitable facility. Very low capital cost to get into. There would be some upfront costs for tenant improvements at these locations to really make it a substation capable, but they already have storefronts, so it'd be like taking an existing storefront and putting a counter into it. Some of them already have counters in them, so very easy to do. The lease cost on those are approximately $7,000 to $9,000 per month for a lease cost. That's about 3,500 square feet of office space and about a 4,000 square foot hangar. So really what this is there's a storefront that's publicly accessible from the front. The back end has a hangar that goes off the back onto the airport property itself. So you're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. That $7,000 to $9,000 a month, even though it's an ongoing lease cost, reflects about 50% of the ground lease, 50% of the ground lease cost from the build project. So it's a much shorter time to completion. So we could have one of those facilities up and running in the next year or 2, as opposed to 5 to 7 years for the extended build process. And it also gives us the flexibility to move as the airport develops. So I talked to Supervisor Hagman. There's significant development that's going to occur at the airport over the next 5 to 10 years. By leasing an existing facility, we maintain the flexibility to move our operations to a better suited location or a different location if we determine that it better suits our needs. And finally, it meets all of our project goals with significant cost savings. So we'd be leasing in the area of, well, now if we're at 15 million, at over 100 years of leasing before we break even on the project costs because of how much the capital costs are for building a new facility at this point. In the interim, we are proposing to continue to use the existing service area inside of Fire Station 3 as an ad hoc substation facility until we can find a suitable lease facility. We could lease a separate hangar for air support if we obtain a helicopter before we find a suitable hangar substation combination facility. And this allows us to pursue a suitable location and then consolidate those operations when the ideal location avails itself. So that kind of is the end of our prepared presentation. Be happy to answer any questions we have.
Chris? Mark?
Well, the only suggestion I would make is obviously I would prefer that we try to get something right on Kimball, or only because it make it so much easier for the residents to find the station as opposed to coming in off at Calero.
Do you mean Merrill?
Merrill, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Aaron?
I don't have any questions, just a comment. I thought that it's not shocking to learn that some of the construction costs would get into that range. And I think you've provided us with suitable and more affordable ways to accomplish that goal in partnership with, you know, the previous project.
Kurt?
Lieutenant, I know at one time the city leased a hangar down at the airport. Do we still have that hangar, or did we give that up when we built a new facility?
Yeah, we gave that lease up when we we built the new police station. We took all of that hangar stuff that was down there. All of our long-term evidence storage went back up to the main police facility, along with our big equipment storage, like our mobile command center, and, you know, other stuff like that.
So knowing our interactions with the airport during that time, our police department was frequently down at the airport dealing with the hangars and the neighbors and the administration at the airport. What was our relationship with the people, the tenants down there, and the airport staff management?
We've always had a really good relationship with the airport. Obviously, Mr. Jenkins was here a couple of meetings ago for his retirement. He was the airport manager at Chino Airport before becoming the department director. We had an excellent relationship. We continue to maintain good relationships with them. We did have a much stronger presence when we were down there. We were down there more often. So, and we are responsible for providing police services to the airport community. The airport community is kind of unique. It's kind of a community within a community. There's a lot of stuff going on down there business-wise, and also there are some people who are living down there as well. So having a presence down there obviously is beneficial to not only the two communities we're looking to serve in the southeast area substation, but also to the airport operations, the airport residents, and the airport businesses.
And Lieutenant, if you know, do we have a lot of crime that occurs on the airport property itself, or is it just very minimal?
Yeah, I would say it's minimal because there aren't a lot of residents there. So occasionally we have crimes. You know, we had sometimes we get drunk driving. Sometimes there are random assaults or some thefts, but it's really minimal because it's a secure facility. You gotta be able to get in there with secured access.
Okay, so it is secure. That was another question that I had. Do they also have security on the property 24/7?
I don't think so.
Chino Police Department, we're not there 24/7 though, so they don't have full-time security.
Right. Thank you, Lieutenant.
I have a follow-up comment to that.
Go ahead.
As a lieutenant, I actually oversaw the evidence operation out of professional standards when we had a hangar at the airport. I think it's important to understand that operation is like comparing apples to oranges to what we would try to be constructing here. The hangar, for the public and everybody else's general knowledge, there was essentially for large vehicle storage, or because we'd outgrown our evidence operation at the Chino Police Department until we moved. We had evidence decentralized in approximately 3 or 4 different locations with longer-term evidence related to traffic collisions where there was a fatality involved. So it was really a secure hangar that had an alarm attached to it. This would be such a different operation in this hangar development. What we would be trying to be accomplished would be a true substation that could complement, you know, potentially air support, as well as provide working space for our personnel to get into the preserve. You know, like even in the old hangar, there's no restroom, there's no facilities, no running water. You always had to worry about the refrigerators crashing and burning when there was a power outage down there to secure and properly maintain evidence, and not to mention just the proper supervision of it. So these two operations would really be quite different from the past operation of the hangar at the airport, and be in a completely different location as well.
Our goal of this substation would be to have personnel assigned there specifically, like a commercial enforcement officer, a motor officer, either a police service officer or a records technician, to have staff work out of the substation to better serve the preserve and the College Park.
Sure, resources that are specific to their problems that they have down there.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
What hours of operation are you planning on running down there?
We haven't got that far as how long they would be there, but it'd be business hours. We started obviously from the fire department, and we had a very wide, we had opened up, we had somebody assigned there for a long period of time. And we evaluated as far as people coming there, and We've had very little of people coming up to the fire, kind of our ad hoc substation. However, when we were out visiting with the residents down there in the community during our Measure V education, they were very happy that we were down in that, has just had a presence down there. So we also have our officers report right down out of that fire station regularly, so they see the police car there parked on Kimball. But it would be at business hours. It would be, whether it be an 8 to 5 or an 8 to 7, we'd have to evaluate the service demand.
It's some of what we're trying to accomplish is born out of the need of the choke point of the airport and the prison itself that provides to our community. There's only certain ways for us to get in and out of different parts of our community, so it is very important for us to have a presence down there. These are ongoing discussions because of the more population that comes into the preserve, the more our resources are traveling down there or service requests. So, and it's difficult to traverse some of those parts of town because of the natural choke points that we have because of landmarks.
In any way we can keep our resources down there, which the fire station has helped us, so they can stay there, whether it be to eat lunch out of the fire station or to report right, use the restroom, and keep resources down there as opposed to having to come back to Center City. It's helped in our response time, so when a call happens down there, they're able to quickly respond.
I have a question, Mayor. Right, currently with the new shopping center that's down there off of Pine and, you know, the one that's going to be coming in across the street, do we have any satellite offices out of those commercial centers?
So they offered us a substation, a space. It was a pizza slice, I guess, for lack of better terms, and the dollar amount they were wanting to charge us was significant, and it just really was, and there was no parking. They wanted us to park in the rear, which defeated the purpose of having high visibility. So really, we evaluated, and we felt it didn't meet what we're trying to accomplish, and being over down the street at the fire station was just the same, and obviously didn't cost us.
I have not seen the master plan of the airport, but is there any expansion planned for along Kimball? You know how you have some hangars along that area?
They are planning to expand along Kimball and on Merrill on the west side. For certain, those two areas, maybe a little bit on Flight.
It would be really nice to have something on Kimball in the future.
And that's the advantage of leasing, because we're able to, if we find a better location than where we're at, we're able to pack our stuff up and move, and we're not tied down to a location, and it's a lease. So you're able to move as the airport develops, and there's talk of Merrill, there was talk, grand plans of Euclid Avenue, so we're able to move to what better serves the community, especially as the community grows too. And with YTS, with the Stark property, if that gets developed down the road, how does that affect us?
That's true. Any possibility of tying that lease to CPI or something so that it doesn't escalate to the point where it's not feasible? Any conversations with the county on that?
Which lease, the ground lease or?
Well, if we choose to go with a lease with a hangar and offices, any way we can control escalating costs?
Yeah, in a standard lease, we'd be able to contract that out. Important to note that the county does not control most of the buildings on the airport property. People hold, they buy those facilities and they ground lease from the county. So all the buildings you see on the, almost, except for the old T hangars, the old hangars, most of those are privately owned, but on a ground lease. So we would lease from somebody other than the county more than likely.
County's not proposing to build anything themselves?
They generally don't. They generally like to let other people develop those things. And that's generally what we've seen and what we've been talking to people down there. These are all being developed by private entities. Obviously, they have to negotiate those things with the county for the ground lease and the approval of the development and the city. But generally speaking, it is private development.
Wasn't there a plan way back when that part of the preserve, the town center, there would be a substation in there?
I don't know if we've had that discussion with them recently.
Maybe not recently, but I thought originally there was a plan to have a police presence in the preserve town center area.
Originally, it was one.
Yeah, and I think that was and that's what we were anticipating, was something significant, something even the size of like what we have at Majestic with the Spectrum. And then when they came forward with their proposal to us, it was that they really offered it to us because they knew a tenant wouldn't take it. And I'll be honest, we were a little disappointed in the size of it and the functionality of how it would serve. And so that's why we and the cost that it was going to cost for what we were getting out of it.
Okay. What a shame. You know, you hear the talk of illegal stuff coming into airports, right? We've not experienced that with Chino Airport.
So generally speaking, when we become aware of illegal activity at the airport, we obviously investigate it. Customs and Border Protection, I don't want to get too deep into the details just for security reasons, but we have a relationship with them as well, and so they provide a lot of information. I would not say it's a widespread problem at the Chino Airport. Does it occur? Certainly, and when it does, we definitely respond and investigate and work with our local, state, and federal partners.
Well, I would say that, you know, should we move forward with this, and it seems like the only logical thing to do, because our diff obviously is not going to meet the needs that we thought we would have, or, you know, meet the cost. I would say keep real close track of that, to maybe use it as leverage going forward when it comes to reimbursement or lease costs or something. I mean, if we're providing services to the airport, they should also be burdened with part of the cost. I just would ask that you be sensitive to ease of the public having access to it, because I know some of those places in the airport are a little bit difficult to get to. You know, and I guess, what's the road that the planes of fame is on? Calero. There's not even a signal planned. And so as traffic increases there, it's going to probably get pretty precarious going in and out. I don't know any other areas along there where they're going to develop where it might be easy to get into. But if we're tucked way inside where the public can't get to, or there's a guard gate, it's kind of defeat our purpose in being available to the public.
So our priority, the first priority is we would like to have one of those storefronts off of Merrill. And that's immediately there. There's parking. It's a storefront. You can see it as you drive across Merrill. We did some inquiring into that. There's none vacant right now. They offered us to be first on the list if one was to come available, that we can move into that. So obviously the second option was the Cal Aero. It will have to be, obviously in order for it to be a substation, it'll have to be on the outside of the gate and access. The other one that we were looking at was just north of the administration office. They're off of Cal Aero.
Okay, any other further questions? Okay, well, please keep us updated as we move forward.
So Mayor, we're just looking for some direction really two things. Would you like us to pursue the lease option on the airport? So we'd like to maybe get a vote on that. And the second is, would you like us to go out to bid on the helicopter and bring it back to a council meeting to appropriate the funds?
Okay, well, I think, listening to the comments, I think obviously we want to move forward with the lease option on the airport with the offices and the hangar. It doesn't seem feasible that we're going to ever have enough money in the diffs to build, and it's way too expensive. So, Fred, do we need to take a motion in a second?
Yes, I understand that's the suggested direction from staff so that they could have some clarity.
Okay, so you don't need a motion, or you do
Yes.
want one? Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion to move forward with the lease option at the airport
One.
for an office and a hangar.
Correct.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Flores, second from Councilman Burton. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 1, moving forward with a bid for a helicopter and further detail on costs along with the bid.
I'll make
Is that an appropriate motion, or Kevin, do you have something additional?
We would like for it to be able to send it out, to get approval to send it out for a request for a bid.
An RFP?
Correct. And then once we receive the bids, we will bring that back to council.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion from Councilman Lucio,
I'll second it, Mayor.
Second from Mayor Pro Tem Comstock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous.
And if I may just ask for some clarification on the second item, obviously the leasing information and the costs and term and all of that will vary. So I understand the motion to just direct staff to move forward to provide the council with those options. Is that a fair
Yes.
assessment?
I think, Kevin, you had mentioned a couple of options, and the map showed a couple of locations. Maybe gathering all that information and bringing it back to us so that we can analyze it.
We will. Obviously, some of that is going to be, as we start researching it, some of it as one comes available, especially if we get one available there on. Our ideal is to marry this up when the helicopter, before the helicopter ride comes.
Right.
Obviously, we don't control the timing. If one was to come available a little bit sooner and we didn't have the helicopter, we could still start outfit it. We can open it up as a substation even before we had a helicopter. It'd be serviceable, just wouldn't have the air support in it. A lot of that comes to timing that's out of our control.
Right. Well, by the time you get the bid for the helicopter and come back to us, that's probably going to take a couple of months.
It will.
Then you said to actually place the order and get it could be 18 to 24 months. So, yeah, you could conceivably locate a location and have that within the next couple, 2 to 4 to 6 months and have it way before the helicopter's available. But I would imagine there's going to be equipment that has to be procured. Along with the bid for the helicopter, I would like more refined cost information, okay, and projections. I would also ask that the reanalysis of what we need for officers moving forward be provided to us if possible. The replacing 4 officers really bothers me, so I don't want to replace people that we need.
So Mayor, we have, and I know it's scheduled for the workshop at the end of July, and part of that is our 5-year staffing analysis, and so for all of our departments. And so we'll bring that forward and we'll be able to talk more about it at that July 31st meeting.
Okay, well, and that might coincide with the bid proposal coming back.
Maybe not that soon.
Maybe not that soon.
Maybe not that soon, Mayor.
Okay, well, at least the personnel portion. Okay, anything further? Any other questions? Any other questions from staff? Any input from the audience? Okay, with that, we will adjourn to our regular meeting to be held on Tuesday, June 18th at 6 with closed session at 4 or earlier, no earlier if necessary. We are adjourned.